Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. We warmly welcome the family of Private Charles William Thomas Gray and Private Victor John Gray, whose stories will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Broken Hill School of the Air, Modenville Public School, Eltham Public School, Coffee Camp Public School, Lindsay Park Public School, Wollongong West, Tarodji Public School, and from Western Australia, Swan Christian College, Middle Swan. Could I ask you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem? Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Privates Charles and Victor Gray. Victor John Gray was born in 1893, and his brother Charles William Thomas Gray was born 2 years later. They were the eldest sons of 13 children, born to John and Louisa Gray of Ferntree Gully near Hobart in Tasmania. Both attended the local school in Ferntree. After finishing school, Victor went to Wellington in New Zealand, where he worked as a labourer. Charlie remained in Tasmania and worked as a farmer. The two were described by their father as bushmen, skilled in a number of occupational pursuits common throughout Tasmania at the time, which included timber cutting, animal trapping, and track cutting. Following the outbreak of war in 1914, Victor Gray enlisted in the New Zealand Expeditionary Force. However, he was able to transfer to the Australian Imperial Force, where he was joined by his brother Charlie at the Claremont military camp. They sailed for England with reinforcements to the 12th Battalion in September of 1916. After several months' training on the Salisbury Plain in England, Victor sailed for France in late February of 1917, joining his battalion near Le Barque on the Somme later that month. Charlie joined him shortly afterwards, and both went on to serve in the same platoon, number 15 platoon of Delta Company. It was around this time that the German army abandoned their Somme defences and withdrew to the more formidable Hindenburg Line. Over the following weeks, Australian and British troops followed up on the German withdrawal, skirmishing with the German rearguard and engaging enemy machine gun positions intended to delay the advancing columns. By the beginning of April, they had reached the outpost villages integrated into the Hindenburg Line defences and stood poised, ready to assault them. One of the outpost villages was Bourses, which the 12th Battalion attacked on the 8th of April. The next day, the men of Delta Company wheeled around the left flank of Bourses village and were engaged by German machine guns, firing from an overwatch position to the east. Victor was severely wounded in the head during the fighting and was evacuated to the 3rd Casualty Clearance Station at Bapaume, where he died the following day. Aged 24 at the time of his death, Victor was buried at the Bapaume Australian Cemetery, where he rests today. A small epitaph written by his grieving parents appears on his headstone. Love and remembrance last forever. 5 days later, Private Charles Gray was killed when large numbers of German troops overran his position near the French village of Lagnicourt. His body was never recovered from the battlefield, and he is among the 10,737 Australians killed fighting in France, commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. Their names are listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. Their photographs are displayed alongside the pool of reflection. You will see Victor John on the left and Charles William Thomas on the right. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Victor John Gray and Private Charles William Thomas Gray, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.